Green Lantern 15, Legacy number 551. This is Jeremy Adams with Fernando Passarin on the art. And, I want to give credit to DC, just sort of in general right now, for this event, Absolute Power, because while I'm not saying that I would have preferred to not interrupt Adams running Green Lantern, but I will say between this, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman, they all feel like classic, like, tie-ins. Back in the day when you'd have an event and a lot of the main books would stop what they're doing and tie into the event. I kind of like, with this one especially, it feels like it's tying into the event, but all the stuff with Carol feels like it's still continuing the main story. And while I did kind of critique that in the last two for that stuff feeling a little bit shoehorned in, I felt like this issue, it felt a bit more natural, if only in the sense that it got more pages, so it felt more like a full-on B-plot in this issue, as opposed to just like one page in the middle.
And then the reason that it's happening, though, as it's, it helps that the events of Absolute Power are also going on. So when Carol shows up to help out and then Sorrow shows up, it feels like, taking advantage of the chaos that is Absolute Power. So, but yeah, no, he's managed to, Jeremy Adams, that is, has managed to really make hay out of these tie-ins.
Yeah, I mean, they've not all been complete bangers or anything, but I think as far as the quality of tie-ins go, to make the event feel like it's actually affecting everything, especially in this book, because you've got actual developments of the main plot with Carol and Sorrow as all the other stuff's going on. I think it works. So you've got Hal and Wally were, of course, tasked with going to the Hall of Order to try and steal the data from Amanda Waller. But they're making a pit stop at one of Bruce's islands on the way, which Wally's very surprised by. Bruce has an island.
I was like, yeah, he's a billionaire. That's kind of their thing. So, I thought that was funny.
Yes. Dick, nor Bruce for that matter, but Dick's the one obviously that gave them the orders, didn't actually tell him to come and do this. This is like an audible that Hal's doing on his own. He's saying, we need this to do the job we've been given. So he's like, hey, we're going to go steal this fancy prototype bat plane, and I'm going to fly it because I'm a pilot, and it's going to be great. It's going to be so cool.
It's new technology. What?
I was going to say, one little thing, it tends to explode.
I just love that Hal, being the test pilot, he doesn't care. He's just like, I just won't go that fast in it. So I thought that was funny. It was like, there's just one little problem with it. It explodes when you reach top velocity. So yeah.
Yeah, so he ignores Oracle when she tries to stop him from doing it, and just takes off. So we get a couple of big pages with Wally on the speedster bike and Hal in this big sort of double-winged bat plane.
Yeah, it's definitely a Bat X-Wing.
Yeah, I suppose that's what
weirdly called a Bat Wolf, though, so I was kind of expecting a helicopter like Airwolf. Right, so I don't know why it was called the Bat Wolf, but it looks cool.
I'm sure it's named after something, but yeah. Then we cut to the stuff with Star Sapphire with Carol, as she shows up to help Dove, who's trying to save people from a burning car, but the crowd forming around her are starting to heckle her and throw stuff at her. So Carol comes in, shields her. And basically, us heroes should be sticking together. Let's try and go somewhere quiet. And just as they're flying off, Dove starts acting weird. Dove starts saying how she should have ended her life when she had the chance. She begs for Carol to kill her, and her speech bubble goes from white to grey. And then I think that this is actually a really good introduction to what Sorrow can do, because I just sort of had the realization, because I was like, wait, why is she saying this? And then it clicked before the page turned on. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I think I get it. And then sure enough, the next page, it's Sorrow. So we're getting this sense that he can actually basically cause sorrow in someone, where they start thinking of all the things in their life that will make them upset and push them to sort of suicidal levels of depression.
Yeah, because it starts with Dove saying that she can't go to the Tower of Fate because her powers are tied to the Lords of Order and Chaos, and there's a deal with them. So when she starts going, she's like, "Oh, I can't. Hawk and the Lords of Order are quiet. It's useless." And I was like, I didn't notice that the bubble was turning gray yet there.
Mm.
And then the next panel, they're fully gray, and that's when it clicked that this was something else. So I
Yeah,
thought,
so something's affecting her. Yeah, well, but
the way that they eased into it was really well handled.
I think the key point though there is that it's not just like a quick, sudden, fake sadness. It is based on her own memories and past. Like it's based on things she actually does feel bad about. So yeah, interesting to see. Almost like a lasso of truth type thing. It'd be interesting to see how, like, if he gets near certain people and uses his power on them, what do they start blabbering about? Like what stuff comes out of them once his power like touches them, if you will. But she instantly Carol instantly recognizes who this is. So the guilt of, like, you know, ditching him probably hits quite a bit hard because oh, I did this to him. He's in this situation because I you know, picked Hal over him. But back to Hal and Wally as Hal. Well, let's just say he asked the Batplane what's on board, weapons wise, defense wise, and it just happens to mention that there's a spare Batmobile on board. This is a big thing. I mean, Matt called it an X-wing, but let's be clear here: this is much bigger than an X-wing because it's got a cargo hold. But he basically just launches the spare Batmobile into the Hall of Justice / Order, and like the defensive like weapons kick in and start like tasering the robots and stuff and all the rest of it.
So I thought because of the way that the plane tends to explode, I just thought he was going to get in the Batmobile and then send the plane like a torpedo into the building, because he was complaining there's only non-lethal options, right? And so I thought he was going to turn the plane into a thing. And then I thought about the week this came out, that's probably not a good idea. So Adams handled that fairly well.
Yeah, I guess I was kind of expecting that too. Like, you know, he'd drive out the back of the plane in the car as the plane goes into the hall. But regardless, Wally speeds in, uses Mr. Terrific's little zapper, like USB stick, to start hacking into things.
USB sphere.
Yeah, and this is when Major Force shows up and starts fighting Wally. Cut to, and this is Brian and other stuff that's going on, which they were getting to in the last issue as well, is the Alan Scott stuff, and the idea that is Jadestone is the name of the Amazo here, the one that's sort of grown a conscience because of the Starheart, and Alan's really trying to, you know, say to him, hey, you've got a choice. You can choose life instead of killing people. You can choose to be something good. You have that now. And he gets the call, I mean, this Amazo gets the call to go and, like, help protect the Hall of Order. And as he's walking away, Alan says, hey, remember, you can choose. And, you know, goodness will always outlive everything else. So that sets up some stuff. I think what's impressed me about this issue is that as much as I thought the last two were decent enough tie-ins, I think this one balanced all of its plots and they all came together in a much better way.
Yeah, he's weaving them in throughout in a way that makes the, like, not that this feels like its own issue, but it feels like, it does feel more like an issue of absolute power than we've had in these tie-ins with the threads that are being pulled in. So, and I never feel like one takes precedence over the other. They're all pretty balanced throughout. Yeah. Even though you would think the Hal and Carol stuff would seem more, but I don't know, the Jadestone, whatever happens with Jadestone here feels like a much bigger deal.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's set up and paid off, I think, is the point, where it doesn't just feel like it's one quick little thing. It sets things up that plays on what's already been established in previous issues, and then pays it off and gives you a big moment with it later on. And, you know, because I'm even just going through it now as we're talking about it, I'm impressed how it's like juggling all these scenes, and it flows really well, which is the complaint I had about the last two issues. There was good stuff in both of them, and I liked most of the elements in them, but they felt really kind of stilted from a structural perspective, and I think this one handles that much better. So yeah, we go back to Carol and Sorrow, and Sorrow's like power starts sort of enveloping Carol, and he's like trying to, like, you know, why did you do this? You know, you made me feel this loss and sadness. You hurt me. Blah 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 blah. And he's like, why did you do this? And then eventually she sort of yells that she loves Hal and starts kind of sort of fighting through it with her own power and trying to like resist.
Yeah, I like what that did here because his power is pretty cool. It's like a fog of sorrow, right? And envelops her, and as she's crying, right, because the fog's coming around her, and she's getting the same kind of sorrow tear kind of design that he has. She says because, and then I love him, and that's where the star sapphire, like that color, the violet starts popping out.
Yeah, it's literally because her lantern colors means love, so it's literally the power of love is expelling the sorrow.
Yeah, it's a curious thing.
Yeah. Oh, it's an intentionally good choice.
Makes one man weep and another man sing. That's the power of love. Pete's mic isn't gone. He's just very upset that I did that.
Oh dear. Anyway, so despite being pushed back, Sorrow was like, "I'll never love again, and after I'm done, you won't either," which is very menacing. But he flies off. But this is where Carol's like, "Shit, this is going on. Sorrow's a thing. All this absolute power stuff's going on. I need to find Hal." So yeah, cut to Hal in this bat plane flying away from Major Force. So we get like a cool action sequence here. The art here's pretty good. Really giving you a sense of motion and this idea that, you know, it's like a dogfight, effectively.
I think that's what the issue's actually called, too. It's called Dogfight.
Is it? I did not even notice that.
So that fits.
So, yeah, Hal kind of like positions so that the thrusters are right in front of him, so sort of sets him on fire, which is a kind of a fun moment. But just as he's getting grabbed, just as Major Force is about to punch through the windshield, this is when Jade Heart, the Amazo, Jade Stone, sorry, swoops in and flies off with Major Force and basically says, "I have chosen my orders. I do not accept the orders of Amanda Waller anymore." And we get basically Hal doing his best Die Hard 2 as he ejects out of the plane as it blows up. So we get him in the chair looking all...
And he's like, "Oh no parachute," which didn't matter last time because I had my ring, but now my ring's not working.
Yeah, so, well, I think the implication is that they never put a parachute in because he was the one testing it, and because he always has his Green Lantern ring, it didn't seem like an issue. But anyway, we should also mention that he was flying towards where the secret hidden power battery is to recharge his ring. So his only hope, he thinks anyway, as he's falling down in the chair, is that he gets close enough to the power battery to charge his ring midair to save his life. Does not work though, it's not going to happen, but the payoff to this again is that Jade Stone grabs him by the leg and makes it clear that he's here to help, and that he will be a guardian of the battery, and even references Tom and says, "Just like Tom before me." And Hal's like, "Wait a minute, you're the new guardian of the power battery? Okay, that's a weird development." But sure enough, he recharges, he's in his Green Lantern outfit now, and this is when Carol shows up. They do a nice thing here with the narration where, like, you hear his narration say, she's all right, and then her narration says, "He's okay." And then they kiss and whatnot. But, she basically says, I kind of finally understand why you always had to like run off and save people, because I'm starting to save people now, and I'm starting to get like why it's important, and maybe instead of you running off, maybe we could both go and actually save things together. It's meeting on some mutual ground. So that's how the issue ends, and a kind of a hopeful note. More to the point though. Obviously, Absolute Power will cap off all the Absolute Power stuff next issue, but it mentions that next month has the Green Lantern Civil Corps special, and even says that Philip Kennedy Johnson is joining him to like sort of finally do the big payoff to the United Planet story. So looking forward to that. Fun to see that. And speaking of, we'll get a backup by Johnson as well, which is listed as an epilogue to War Journal. But any more thoughts on this before we move on?
Yeah. Before we move on, so Carol mentions when they're there that like if she can concentrate, she can tell where he is, right? And I is that like a new development with the Star Sapphire power, right? Because it's like she knows because she loves him, right? Or is this tied to what's going on with the Spectrum? That's my main question with that one. Well,
the why I don't have an answer for you, but as far as this being new, I think it's relative. Well, I mean, maybe it's been a thing before, but as
Yeah.
far as like this run goes, it's not the first time it's kind of happened though. She
Right.
knew he was in trouble. Remember when she almost got married and she realized
Yeah.
Hal was in trouble and she had to go out and save his ass.
Mm-hmm.
So it is now. So it was teased then, and this is kind of it
Yeah.
coming to fruition and her actually acknowledging it and talking about it. Whether or not it was ever a thing back in the day, I don't know. But
Yeah. But I like that development. It's like she knew. So I was like, either this is a Star Sapphire thing or this is whatever's going on with the Spectrum, right? She's she can tell where Hal needs her and that thing.
I think
and then just
sorry, I think that whether or not it is being caused by the Spectrum going wonky. Although I don't think if I was to guess, I would say it's more because she's truly in love with him now, and because her whole powers are based around love.
right.
It's
Makes
just
sense too.
it ties him to her. But I suspect it'll stick around at least during this run, just because
Yeah.
I don't think it's something that's too much of a rating hurdle. Like it's something that won't come up that often, especially if they specify it only comes up when he's in like proper danger.
Like mortal danger type
Yeah.
stuff, yeah. And then just a fun art piece is that Jadestone standing there guarding the battery with this gigantic sword. Of a great sword. So I just thought, I was like, oh, that's fun. Hal said guard it, and then she's like, gotcha.
Yeah,
So
it looks like a human being holding the sword that the Megazord would have been using.
Yeah.
That's the size, that's the scale that we're talking about here.
and that's just a little fun aspect that I wanted to pinpoint. But yeah, no, very very fun issue. The one, and this is a nitpick, this is a small little thing. I don't like Wally calling Hal Uncle Hal. I thought that was weird. Just because it doesn't seem, but other than that, that's a very slight nitpick. But
I think it's done to just differentiate between Barry talking to Hal and Wally talking to Hal. Not that Barry's in this issue, but just in general,
Yeah.
that Wally's the younger generation, so
Yeah.
I think that's the logic behind it. But I mean, yeah, I'm not fussed either way, but I get it. So
yeah.
No, it's good. Pasarin's art's pretty solid. All the stuff with the plane and Major Force was good, as was even just the plane stuff going into the Hall of Justice and the Batmobile firing out. Like all that action stuff was really good, and I think the art with Carol and the Star Sapphire outfit dealing with Sorrow was also good, and especially since Sorrow's color is gray. It's inherently this unappealing color, and then Star Sapphire, this violet, this solid, vivid color to combat it. There's a nice contrast between the two. So yeah, I mean, to be fair, any strong color would contrast well with
Yeah,
gray.
gray's kind of in that thing where it's kind of absence of color almost, right? It's just like it's there.
Yes. Yeah. So, yes, he has many shades of gray, one might say. 52 Shades of Grey. Oh, if they ever do a miniseries, they have to call it that for Sorrow. 52 Shades of Grey. No?
Look, I'm going to read it. If Adams, whatever they call it, I'm reading it. So
They'll do a one shot called 52 Shades of Grey, and it's about Sorrow trying to get back into a sex life.
speed dating.
Oh dear. Okay, so the backup is the War Journal epilogue. Johnson and Mantos is here as well on the art. So this was a really nice surprise. I didn't know this was coming.
Me neither. I was expecting another Theros story, and I was like, oh shoot.
I
We got a War Journal.
Joe, I think works about this is that it works as an epilogue to that book, right? Absolutely. I think it also works as a way to just like tell anyone who's been reading Green Lantern but not War Journal. I think it kind of just gets you up to speed. Okay, John's got the Dark Star ring. He still get his powers. He's made a construct that's kind of turned into a living being that looks like his sister. It's not actually his sister, of course, but she's kind of,
Yeah.
And
It's an approximation.
And I think the writing here actually makes a point of trying to just not explain how it happened, but explain just in a sense where the audience that doesn't know can understand what she is, because he even says in the dialogue, oh, like she was just based on my sister, but now she's starting to like say things that I wouldn't expect. She's starting to know things that my sister didn't know. She's evolving. She's a learning.
She's
construct.
becoming her own being.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's weirdly created life, and that's a thing that the ring shouldn't be able to do. So what's going on with Al or Hal with John.
Yeah.
I'm used to saying what's going on with Hal but yeah, here it's
Yeah.
going on with John, and I love. But
I was going to say that both Hal and John have weird like versions of Green Lantern powers now, but that's not actually true. Hal seemed like he did for a while, but it turned out it was just no. There's a power battery on Earth. It's literally just the same old thing,
he's
just with a new
closer
battery.
to it.
Yeah. Whereas John's powers are very distinct now from everyone else.
Yeah, but I also like that John Henry Irons is here and he's working on a project for Steelworks, and he's like, I didn't bring you on just because of your superpowers, right? Like, you're a very gifted architect, and we could do some great work for people that isn't just superheroes, superhero work. And so I like that going forward, because if that's kind of what the focus of the whole Civil Corps kind of is, it's going to be the Green Lantern Corps actually helping people and not the Space Cop way, which is something I don't think I've seen before. At least this Green Lantern.
Yeah, the gist of this is that they've just finished building this sky rail for Steelworks, and the sister is like wanting to like do a test drive of it, and these like bots from a rival corporation or terrorists like show up to try and derail the train. And John freaks out because, his sister, but not sister, is in trouble. But she's like, no, I was never in danger. I've got powers. And she does. Not only does she take out the bot, she fixes the track that they've blown up so that it doesn't like derail or, cause any harm. And I think the most interesting part of this for me is where towards the end where John, this is so awkward because they're both called John. I'm like, it's that bit in Jurassic Park. Hello, John. Hello, John. Hello, John. Hello, John. But it's just, so yeah, John's just starting to steal. I'm just going to say steal, right? Just
Steal.
avoid the confusion. He's like, hey, how do you like do this with your niece? Because like I've never had to fight with my family being there, and between like my kind of sister and the fact that my mother is now in the ring, right? I've preserved my mother's essence in the ring, and she's the one talking to me. Like now I have to worry about them when I'm out there because they're fighting with me. And Steele kind of says, yeah, like, it was scary at first, but, like, I take comfort in the fact that, like, she's not doing this because of me. She would have always ended up of doing this, but at least this way I get to be there and, be a part of it and whatnot. Yeah. Like, so your sister would have always become this. This is just her nature. It's who she is. But yeah, it teases at the end here, though, that, John's got a big future. And, again, just like the main story, it says continued in Green Lantern Civil Corps special. I like that it feels like, despite the fact that War Journal's ended, because Johnson's still very much involved in this special and like what the next sort of main chunk of Green Lantern is, it doesn't just feel like it's been left aside. It feels like, oh no, everything that's set up is like going to continue and be paid off in some way. And they even reference the fact, as Castile mentions, when Natasha came back from Warworld, it was this Dark Star heart thing, and also you've got a ring now from this weird god thing.
The same old god. There's something going on, John. Like,
so yeah,
I can't tell what's in your future, but I think it's going to be big.
It's
ooh.
He's basically, Johnson is directly connecting those two threads from his two different books here in this little moment. So. No, this is cool. I wonder. I suspect this might be at the end of the collection for War Journal when it's collected in trade. But it's kind of cool that this next like Green Lantern crossover or event or whatever you want to call it is, like it's taking both books and what they've been building up to and sort of bringing them together. And obviously the United Planet stuff's been brought up all over DC over the last like 6-7 months between Superman and whatever else. So no, I'm excited. I've been enjoying the saga of this United Planets and Tharos and all that stuff. It's been a good ongoing web of plot that feels really well thought out. Between this, the Absolute Power stuff feeling quite natural amongst the different books, I feel like for the first time, really, and obviously we have been very positive about a lot of books since we started this show, since Rebirth. Rebirth definitely brought a lot of the connectivity back that was missing before. I feel like this is the first time, though, since we started this show, where I feel like the old days of, like, it really feeling like a shared world, where everything feels like it's, like, referencing each other, feels like it's here. And I don't think, even at the best of times since we started this show and Rebirth and everything that came after, I don't know if I've quite had this feeling. I don't even know if I don't even think I noticed that I was missing it necessarily either.
Yeah.
But now that we've got it between some of these other plots going on right now, I'm kind of liking it.
Stuff felt very compartmentalized. Like the Bendis stuff, whatever books he was working on.
Oh yeah.
They were playing in those kind of sandboxes as well. But that didn't have to do with anything else. None of like Justice League wasn't being informed by Bendis unless Bendis was writing a story in Justice League, right? So yeah, so the fact that the editorial's working seamlessly together with the writers and artists, and they're being able to create this tapestry of like where it feels like the world of DC is actually there.
It feels alive, yeah.
Yeah, and then that's a good feeling to have when and they're not beating you over the head with it either, where you're having to bend over backwards to make continuity work, because they're just trying to tell the best story they can, right?
Yeah, no, it's felt sort of fairly natural, at least to what I expect from a comic book. And like I said, it's not just the 2 Green Lantern books referencing this thing that's going on with United Planets. It's popped up across the board. Anything involving people going to space basically has mentioned it, and that's just a good bit of editorial there. There's an art to keeping like a shared universe going, and we see how hard it is, in movies even with Marvel, and like how much of a wet fart that's been for the last few years. So it's interesting to see them kind of get back to it, and I do wonder if part of that is Wade, because Wade was around during 52, during Infinite Crisis, and like obviously he wasn't the main one spearheading that, but I wonder if like having a couple of experienced people from that time period around is helping that considerably. I'd be very curious. But
yeah, because when you look on the writers of 52, Wade's the only one that's still actively working for the company.
Yeah.
Too. So I wonder if he's kind of bringing his mentorship to some of these younger writers, and be like, hey, if we all kind of work together, it ends up being better. But yeah.
All right, Matt. What are you giving Green Lantern 15?
I'm gonna give this a solid 8.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Part of me almost wants to like applaud it for just feeling like such a complete package between both the main story and the backup being good, both feeling like they're building to this next Green Lantern story, and also effortlessly tying into the main event, even better than either of the previous issues did. The downside, of course, to having it both do its part of the run and also tie into the main like event that's going on, is that it does mean it's a bit awkward in future when you're reading the trade and like all this absolute power stuff. If you're just reading Green Lantern, it's going to feel a bit weird. But that was the sort of thing back when I was getting into comics, before I was reading singles, where like I was reading Green Lantern, and when I got to Blackest Night, I instantly said, well, I need to read a bunch of other things that are going on. And because other characters would reference what was going on in their books, that made me want to try other books in DC, and it became this kind of spiraling thing. So with a bit of luck, maybe this'll do that for a few people and get people reading some books that they wouldn't have otherwise tried.